Good morning, everyone. It's Friday. It's lovely to see all of this fantastic work that you guys have been doing. I know I've been getting lots of fantastic JoJo's, lovely pictures. We had some fantastic aliens and some fantastic pants as well. They were fantastic. Well done. I've got a lovely story for you today. It's about a lady who has a bicycle. I've got a bicycle, but I haven't been on it for quite a few weeks. I'll be glad to get back on it when I can. This lady is called Mrs Armitage. There she is. Now, you might recognise the illustrations from this book. They're by a man called Quentin Blake. He does lots of illustrations for Roald Dahl. He has written this book and illustrated it as Quentin Blake. So let's see what Mrs Armitage gets up to on her bike. It's called Mrs Armitage on Wheels. Mrs Armitage was out on her bicycle. Breakspear, the dog, ran alongside. Oh, Breakspear doesn't get tangled in the wheels. It's a very old-fashioned kind of bicycle. Mrs Armitage is sitting up very, very high and very proud on her bicycle. A hedgehog walked across the road. Dring, dring, went Mrs Armitage on the bell. Not sure if the hedgehog heard. What this bike needs, said Mrs Armitage to herself, is a really loud horn. The hedgehog probably agrees as well. Mrs Armitage went to the horn shop and she bought 3 horns and they were all very loud. Beep, beep, honk, honk, bah-here, went Mrs Armitage on her horns. She frightened an old lady who nearly lost her glasses. They're both jumping in the air with fright. Mrs Armitage was riding along and then her chain came off. The chain is the bit that goes between the foot pedals and the wheels, which makes the bike move. By the time Mrs Armitage had got back and fixed it back on again, her hands were all black and oily and greasy. What this bike needs, said Mrs Armitage to herself, is somewhere where you can wash your hands. Well, poor Breakspear's hoping that he doesn't get touched by Mrs Armitage. Her hands are really, really oily. So she got a bucket of water and a towel and a soap rack and a bar of soap, and she hung them all on her bike. And she carried on with beautifully clean hands. What this bike needs, said Mrs Armitage to herself as she cycled along, is it for to be looked after properly. I need a complete toolkit, she said. So she got a toolbox with spanners and screwdrivers and hammers and oil. She fixed it onto the back of her bicycle and off she went. By now, Mrs Armitage was beginning to think about food. She was getting a bit hungry. What this bike needs, said Mrs Armitage to herself, is somewhere to carry a light snack. So she added a tray for apples and bananas and cheese and tomatoes, sandwiches, and a holder for a bottle of lemonade and a flask of cocoa. It's hot chocolate. And a special basket for Bones and dog biscuits for Breakspear. She fixed them onto her bike and off she went. Look at Breakspear here, look. He knows that he's got snacks too. But by now, it was such a long ride, Breakspear was feeling quite tired running along beside the bicycle. You could tell because his tongue was hanging out and he was panting. "What this bike needs," said Mrs Armitage, "is something for a faithful dog to ride on," she said. So she fixed on some brackets and nuts and bolts and cushions, and she made a seat for Breakspear, and off she went. This reminds me a little bit of Room on the Broom. Bet we know that one. Julia Donaldson's book, where they have the broom and they fix things all over it for the different animals. This one reminds me of the look, Breakspear sat on the back behind the snacks. They had stopped beside the road for some sandwiches and dog biscuits when it started to rain. "Great heavens," said Mrs Armitage. "What this bike needs, Breakspear, is somewhere to keep the rain off." So she got 2 umbrellas, a large one and a small one, and she fixed them on the bicycle, and off she went. Look at Breakspear sitting on the back, he's super dry. Riding through the rain, Mrs Armitage began to feel rather downhearted. "What this bike needs," said Mrs Armitage to herself, "is a little bit of cheerful music." So she got a radio cassette player and cassettes and cheerful musics and a mouth organ so she could join in, and she fixed them all onto the bike, and off she went. Mrs Armitage was turning the pedals and blowing the mouth organ so fast she was soon nearly exhausted. "What this bike needs," said Mrs Armitage, "is a little bit of extra oomph." So she got some wood and some ropes and some tarpaulin, this is this cloth here, and she rigged up the mast and a sail, and she added some bunting with all the flags, and she put an anchor on into the bargain. I wonder if anybody knows what an anchor might be for. I bet you do. And off they went with the wind behind them. Faster and faster and faster until crash, crunch, clang, clatter and thud. Can you see what's happened to the anchor? The anchor's usually used for stopping boats or keeping boats still in the water. But this one's got caught on a tree and everything has got flown off the bike. And the horn's going. Mrs Armitage's bottom sat on it and the horn made a noise. "What this bike needs, Breakspear," said Mrs Armitage as she picked herself up off the wreckage, "is taking to the dump. And what I need," she said, what did Mrs Armitage need? Some roller skates. "But what these roller skates need," said Mrs Armitage, "is..." That's the end of the story. I wonder what Mrs Armitage needed for her roller skates. I think that's a whole other story, don't you? Can you feel a challenge coming? I definitely can. I wonder what Mrs Armitage might add onto her roller skates. Does she need snacks? Does she need an engine? Does she need sails to make them go faster? Maybe Breakspear needs his own roller skates too. I think that you guys could think of some really cool things to put on her roller skates. Or you could just do a really fantastic bike design. What would you put on your own bike to make it better or faster or more fantastic? Can you do me a really fantastic design for a bike? Tell me what it looks like. Maybe you could draw some things on and put some words on to tell me what all the bits are for. I think that would be really cool. I think if I had a bike, I think I'd have to put an engine on it, because cycling up hills is pretty tricky for Miss Law. So I think I'd fix some kind of engine on the back, and maybe I'd have to have some music too. Maybe I'd have to have a space for Albert, because he likes sitting. He likes exploring. He could sit on the back, couldn't he? Okay, guys, I can't wait to see what you come up with. I'm going to go off for now, and it's Friday, so I'll probably see you after the weekend on Monday. I'll be thinking of some really good books. If you have a favourite book and you want me to have a go at reading it, maybe you could let me know. I'll see if it's upstairs in my cupboard of books. Unfortunately, lots of my books are at school and I can't get there just now, but I'll see what I can do. Okay, so take care, be safe, look after everybody, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye, take care.